All right. Okay. I think we are recording. Everything looks good. I got my GV background. We're ready to go. So I will go ahead and start by introducing myself. I am Dr. Mary Joy McConnor, but most people call me MJ. And I am a proud Grand Valley State University alum. I graduated in 2008. So yeah, it's been a while. Wow, almost 20 years. So not quite 20 yet. As I think about my time at Grand Valley, I'm always so grateful for everything that I learned and everything that I got out of my experience as a student. And so I'll talk about that a little bit. But today we are talking about one of my absolute favorite topics to discuss. So I am going to share screen and pull up a slide deck that I created particularly for this discussion. So our topic for today is courageous leaders challenging the process. So I'll tell you all why I have a particular passion for this topic and why I enjoy being a guest lecturer and focusing on this in particular. So my entire career has been centered on being courageous. And because of the nature of the work that I do and the people I work with and the organizations I work with, I have to constantly challenge people to think about things differently, right? To get us to think beyond the status quo, get us to think about things that may be different. One of my biggest things where when I hear a person say, well, it's always been done this way, I will challenge that immediately because we know that just because something has always been done a certain way, doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be the most effective way of doing things, especially as times change, right? And so that's a little bit about why I love this so much. And as I mentioned, I'm a proud graduate of Grand Valley State University. When I was at GVSU, President Emeritus Haas was the president at the time, and so we built a really great relationship. And he was not unfamiliar with me coming, to him as a student leader saying, "Hey, we need more of this. The students are wanting this. We want to see this happen." And with that, yeah, I really built some really great skills and just great relationships because of my time at GVSU. So it's always a pleasure to be here with you all. So I always like to begin with this quote. And the reason I really feel like this quote is particularly impactful in this moment in time is because there's so much happening, not just on a national level, but on a global scale. And so the quote reads, there's a moment where you have to choose whether to be silent or stand up. And this can look a lot of different ways. So, of course, a lot of people, when they hear this, they may think, oh, is this like something related to activism? And not necessarily. There are going to be moments in your career, there are going to be moments in your, just family life or whatever it may be where you have to decide if I'm silent in this situation, is this going to be effective? Would it be more useful for me to use my voice, my skills, my talents in a certain way in this particular situation? And so as we go through the presentation, I want you to keep this in mind, right? We're talking about change. We're talking about acknowledging that there's going to be times where we have to be courageous and voice our views on something, even if most folks they may not see the value in it right away. That is okay. Sometimes we still have to do it knowing like we may get some pushback, but it's important for us to provide different perspectives on different matters. So, a little bit more about me. There we go. A little bit more about me, just so you all know. So, I'm the founder and CEO of a small consulting firm called Inclusive Excellence Consulting, and we're headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee. We have a small but mighty team. I want to say, let me make sure I got my number right. It's 12 of us, 12 of us on our team. And so we get to work with organizations around the nation and even some organizations internationally to help them develop more cohesive, collaborative, and inclusive cultures, right? So we do a lot of leadership development, a lot of team development. And as you can imagine, anytime you go into an organization and you're helping teams work together more efficiently, you're going to push some people out of their comfort zone. And so that's why I joke and I say, my entire career it has been nothing but courageous leadership because I've always had to be. I've always had to, just because of the nature of the work that I do, right? And no matter what kind of career you have, there is going to be a time where, there might have to be some courageous decisions that are made, something that may challenge the status quo. Kind of going back to what I said earlier, you may get some colleagues that say, "Oh, it's always been done this way." Well, I know it's always been done this way, but can we do it better? Can we do it more effectively? Can we do it more efficiently? And so that's why, I think it's important for us to have this conversation and to think about how our personality types align with how we deliver messages, how we communicate with others. One other thing I want to mention too is that I actually had the opportunity to be an American Council on Education Fellow at Grand Valley State during the 2021-2022 academic year. And so with that, I actually worked directly with President Mantella and her team to help them as they implemented different policies and they were taking on different initiatives and projects. And so I got to see Grand Valley under two different presidents, which kind of reaffirmed my love for Grand Valley. Like, there's so much happening. And sometimes, especially when you graduate and you move on and you have your family, your career, uh, you're not always attuned to what's happening with your alma mater. But this was the perfect opportunity for me to see some of the things that were happening at Grand Valley and how some processes were being challenged there and how it took some courageous leadership to kind of make some really bold decisions. So I just have a lot of respect for President Amiris Haas and President Mantella and the work they've done and how they've had to lead courageously over their careers. So one of the questions I get often is, you're just so bold and unapologetic in your approach sometimes. What prepared you for this? How did you get prepared to take on these different leadership roles? And where did you learn to challenge status quos, right? And challenge things uh that maybe other folks might be a little too scared to challenge at times. And so I give a hint. If you look at the background and you look at my background, I could tell you exactly where I learned these skills. I learned it at Grand Valley State. And so just a little bit about my experience. So I was a part of, I want to say at least five student organizations during my undergraduate studies. As you can see there, I was a leader on the Greek Life Council in 2027 during my 2027-2028 during my last year at Grand Valley, my senior year. I was a part of the Laker Leadership Internship Program. So you can see us in the middle. We're acting silly. It had fun taking a little photo there. And then on the far right, you can see a picture of me with fellow students. And I think we had just came back from a conference. So we were at the Greek Life Conference. Um, and so I owe a lot to Grand Valley, right? And what I want to stress that's really important is that a lot of times we think of, oh, a quality education, right? We think of the classroom experience. And I want us to think about it in terms of both academics and think about it in terms of leadership development. And we don't always think about education that way. And I want us to really think about it that way throughout the presentation. And so I have this here. My undergraduate education at GVSU equipped me with essential critical thinking skills to think like a scholar, practitioner, and unapologetic change agent. And so, as you go throughout your experience at Grand Valley, and I know most of you will probably be graduating soon, but even now, just think about, okay, are there some other skills that I can develop during my time here that can complement the academic work that I've been doing? Because it's really important. I always say that what you learn outside of the classroom is equally important to what you learn in the classroom. Both complement each other really well. And so that's a little bit about my experience. Now I want to tell you a little bit about my personality type and why it's important for us to understand who we are and our personality type. So you all have taken the Myers-Briggs assessment at this point, and the Myers-Briggs has a special place in my heart. I administer it uh, to others, like so when I go into organizations and do team development, leadership development work. Myers-Briggs is one of the assessments we use, along with some others. Um, but this one has a particular special place in my heart because I remember going to the career services office at Grand Valley State University and saying, "Hey, I think I want to take a personality test." And I was like, I just feel like I need to know a little bit more about me and how I show up and why I show up the way I do. So, of course, I took the Myers-Briggs, and it came back that I was INTJ. So, and a little bit about INTJs. So, it's considered the architect. And I'll read this here. So, INTJs form 2% of the population, and women only form 0.8%. People with this personality type are imaginative yet decisive, ambitious yet private, goodness, I can't talk, wildly curious but focused on how they expend their energy. And what's interesting is I had never taken a personality assessment prior to that. That was my first time ever doing it. I did it because I was a psychology major and somebody recommended it. And they were like, hey, you're a psych major and you've never even done like a personality assessment. And so I was like, okay, I'll go do it. And when I got the results back, it was almost like an aha moment for me. I was like, oh, so this is why, I see things a certain way and engage in a certain way. And so there really is a lot of value in understanding your personality type, your communication style. They have like different communication assessments out there. They have leadership assessments. I strongly encourage everyone to take a leadership assessment at some point, just because it will help you in the long run. But it was like this aha moment of this is why I engage with people the way I do, why I see things the way I see it. And so, of course, I was curious. I was like, well, who are some other INTJs? And so I laugh because, the tech bros have been getting a lot of conversation lately. But if you look to the right, or I'm sorry, look to the left, you'll see some other famous INTJs such as Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Stephen Hawking, who I have a great appreciation for him and his work. And so I felt compelled to learn more about it. And I also felt compelled to think about, well, knowing that this is a personality type of mine and that we exhibit certain strengths, how can this benefit me in my career? And so if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of different careers. And lo and behold, what do you see? You see consultant right there, the second one from right after economist. And so, me being a consultant is like full circle moment. Yep, this was this was always destined for me, right? But I want to encourage each of you to think about knowing who I am from a personality standpoint, from a value standpoint, what I bring to the workplace. How can this be a benefit to me and the organization, right? How can it serve you? And so now I kind of want to tie in another aspect, just because this is a big part of the work that I do, is thinking about, okay, so I know my personality type, I know my preferred communication style. How do all of my different identities intersect and intertwine with my personality type? So I identify as woman. I'm African American. I am dyslexic, and a member of the hard of hearing community. I am Catholic, right? You think about the religious aspect. I'm a millennial, so my experience might be a lot different than maybe a Gen Zer or a baby boomer who has been a part of the workforce for several years. And then I'm also INTJ personality type. So you think about all of these different intersecting identities who make up who I am. And then you think about, okay, who am I like in terms of personality? How do I show up? Right. And so it's important for each of us to think about it. And I know right now, and I'll address the elephant in the virtual room, right? I know there's a lot of talk about, well, we shouldn't focus so much on our differences, right? We hear some of the political discussions around diversity and inclusion, accessibility. Let me go back a slide. But it's really important for us to remember that everyone brings something unique to the workplace, especially. And that is a strength in so many ways. And I know, like I said, not to make it political or anything like that. I know there's been a lot of discussion about it, but I want us to just challenge ourselves to think about this differently and think about it in a way where you're really assessing how can I use my unique strengths to help promote certain causes and to support. Sorry, I'm struggling to talk today. To support different causes, different initiatives, and different projects, right? And whatever that may be. Because we all bring something unique, we all have different talents, and we all have different skill sets and things that pique our interest. I just want to challenge us. This is part of that challenging the process, right? Challenge us to think about how all of your different intersecting identities can be a benefit, whether, it's a community you grew up in, whether it's, your affiliation with a certain organization, maybe you do some volunteer work, some nonprofit work, whatever it may be. All of that shapes who you are and it shapes your experience. So I want you all to consider this. So now that you have your results back, you know your personality type, I want you to think about how do your intersecting identities shape your experiences as change agents and leaders? How does your personality type shape your experience as change agents and leaders? And so, it's pretty obvious for me how mine has shaped my experience, right? So, a big part of what I do is advocating for marginalized groups. I do a lot of work around neuro inclusion and disability inclusion in particular. And so, my mission is pretty straightforward. It's four sentences. So advocate for historically marginalized groups, lift up the oppressed, support the underprivileged, speak up for those whose voices have been historically silenced. And what I want to emphasize here, just because of, like I said, I would be remiss if I didn't address this, given some of the conversations happening on a national scale. But I want to say that each of us is going to have a mission that's unique to us, and there are going to be times where the pendulum swings back and forth between something, right? So even though there are some right now who feel like, well, you shouldn't be doing this work, right? No, you should not be doing this. My mission still remains constant. So what I stand for, my values will remain constant even as the pendulum swings back and forth, right? Regarding politics or whatever it may be. And so I want you to think about that as well. So if you have a certain mission, and you have certain values and certain things you stand for, will you still stand for those things even as people may question whether or not you should stand for those things? And one other thing I want to emphasize is that it's okay for your mission to change too. And so it's certain things like your core values, who you are, what you stand for, that will probably always be a part of you, right? So I know a lot of folks in our class are probably very family oriented, for example, and you probably always will be. That is a part of you. But there might be certain parts of your mission that may change over time, and that's okay too. So I just want you to really always take the opportunity to self-assess where you are in a given moment of time. So when I think about the MJ from 20 years ago versus the MJ from 15 years ago versus the MJ from 5 years ago, you know, I would say there are some things that have changed about me and the way I engage. There are some things that I have adjusted as a professional because I recognize, like, okay, in order to truly do what I love and in order to truly make sure I'm getting my message across to people, I do have to take a very diplomatic approach as opposed to just, rah rah social justice warrior approach, right? And you will figure that out about yourself with time. But my core mission never really changed. So I have always been this advocate for different causes and different things that I think would help make our society more accessible and inclusive for all. And so just, as you think about your mission, keep that in mind that, who you are at your core, it is okay to always it is okay to continue valuing certain things even if there's pushback. I'll just say it that way. I'm trying to be very, because this is one of those very hot button issues right now in our society. But I still think it's important for us to talk about it, no matter where we lie on the spectrum of our perspective of something. I think it's important for us to always have productive conversations, even when we don't always agree on something, right? And that's a part of leadership. So, here's what you need to know. No matter what it is, it can be something as simple as an IT professional who has an idea about a new piece of technology that the organization can implement. Or it can be something as big as, me going to meet with legislators, because I'll be meeting with legislators here in Tennessee soon. But know that advocating for change is not always easy. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what field you work in, no matter who you work with, it is not always easy. And you may encounter some resistance. And the best thing you can do is to be prepared for resistance and say, I know that me speaking up and saying, hey, I think we should buy this new piece of technology could ruffle some feathers because there might be some folks who feel like, no, we should not buy that. And so it won't always be easy. Do I always get the support and resources I need? No. Will you always get the support and resources you need or the advocacy you need behind something? Not necessarily. But does it make a difference? Yes. And so I want you to keep that in mind as you go out into the world after you graduate or even now. Like, don't wait until you graduate. But as you navigate this world, right, that we live in, and you think about your purpose, your mission, and how you're going to show up, I want you to keep these things in mind, that it won't always be easy. Like, there are going to be times where your views will be challenged and you will have to challenge others' views. But courageous leadership will always have a place in our society. Ooh, that's a word. I'm going to repeat that. Courageous leadership will always have a place in our society. If you look at any moment in history, it always has. If you enjoy reading history as much as I do, I like to look at just all types of history. I just love history. But you'll see pretty much in every major era, there was always a courageous leader. Always. If you look at most organizations, there's always at least one person within the organization who is not afraid to challenge certain processes, who is courageous in their leadership style. And I encourage each of you to do the same. And most importantly, I want you to let your mission guide you in fulfilling your destiny. So again, I am Dr. MJ, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I have my email address here. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And you can reach out directly and just say, hey, you said something that I want to talk more about. And so I always, take the opportunity to meet with folks if they have questions or any ideas that they want to talk about, or if you're navigating certain parts of your academic journey or soon to be professional journey, because I know some of you may work in addition to going to school. But no matter where you are, it's always important to think about leadership and to think about how you are going to show up and how your mission will guide you. So I appreciate you all for your time, and I am going to make sure I stop the recording this time. And like I said, I'm proud of each of you all, and you all are going to each show up in a unique way that I think will benefit our society. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and I look forward to hopefully having a chance to meeting you all virtually at some point. So thank you for your time.